Lock your doors and turn up the volume, because today we're stepping inside the UK's most terrifying prisons, where the walls still whisper with ghostly screams. These abandoned hellholes are crawling with restless spirits, from executed inmates to tortured souls who refuse to move on. Some are so haunted, even guards refuse to go inside after dark. If you think you're brave enough to face the horrors that lurk within, think again. Stick around, if you dare, because these real-life ghost stories will leave you sleeping with the lights on. Let's begin. Want more bone-chilling haunted stories? Hit subscribe now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers before September 1st, 2025, because the scariest tales are yet to come. 1 Shepton Mallet Prison, Somerset. Shepton Mallet Prison, located in Somerset, is one of the oldest and most haunted prisons in the UK. Opened in 1610, it operated for over 400 years before closing in 2013, making it England's oldest working prison until its shutdown. Its long, dark history of executions, harsh punishments, and wartime use has left behind a chilling atmosphere, and many believe the spirits of the dead still linger within its walls. During its early years, Shepton Mallet was known for its brutal conditions. Prisoners endured hard labor, floggings, and even executions. The most famous hanging was of 16-year-old John Waits in 1835, who was executed for arson. Visitors and staff have reported seeing his ghostly figure near the hanging area, along with the sound of a noose tightening. Others have heard unexplained cries and footsteps in empty corridors, as if the suffering of past inmates never truly left. The prison also served as a military detention center during World War II, holding American soldiers convicted of crimes, including murder. Some were executed by firing squad, and their restless spirits are said to haunt the prison. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange voices and sudden temperature drops in the execution room. Some even claim to have seen shadowy figures standing at attention, as if awaiting their fate. One of the most active areas is C Wing, where violent criminals were kept. Guards and visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming on their own, whispers in empty cells, and the feeling of being watched. A famous ghost story involves a former prisoner who hanged himself in his cell. His tormented spirit is said to reappear, swinging from the ceiling before vanishing. The prison's chapel is another hotspot for paranormal activity. People have heard ghostly hymns and sobbing, possibly from prisoners seeking solace before execution. Some have even seen a mysterious woman in black, believed to be the ghost of a grieving mother who lost her son to the gallows. Today, Shepton Mallet Prison offers ghost tours and overnight stays for brave visitors. Many leave with stories of unexplained knocks, sudden chills, and even physical touches from unseen hands. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the prison's eerie past and countless reports of hauntings make it one of the UK's most terrifying locations. The suffering and death within its walls seem to have left a permanent mark, one that still sends shivers down the spines of those who dare to enter. 2 York Dungeon, North Yorkshire. York Dungeon, located in the historic city of York, is not a traditional prison but a place where some of England's darkest and most brutal punishments were carried out. Built on the site of the original York Castle, it has a terrifying history of torture, executions, and suffering, making it one of the most haunted places in the UK. Many believe the spirits of those who died here still linger, trapped in the shadows of their painful past. The dungeon's history stretches back to medieval times when it was used to hold prisoners before their trials or executions. Some of the most famous inmates were the highwaymen Dick Turpin and the Pendle Witches, who were accused of witchcraft in the 17th century. Turpin was executed in York in 1739, and his ghost is said to haunt the area, with visitors reporting the sound of galloping hooves, a chilling reminder of his infamous escape attempts. One of the most disturbing stories is that of the Pit of Despair, a deep, dark hole where prisoners were thrown and left to rot. Many died from starvation, disease, or sheer terror, and their anguished cries are still heard today. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange moans and whispers coming from the pit, even when no one is inside. Some visitors claim to feel sudden cold spots or invisible hands grabbing them as they walk past. Another haunted spot is the torture chamber, where devices like the rack and the Iron Maiden were used to extract confessions. The air here feels heavy, and people often report hearing screams from the past, as if the victim's pain has been imprinted on the walls. A ghostly figure, believed to be a tortured prisoner, has been seen kneeling in a corner, begging for mercy before vanishing into thin air. The most famous ghost in York Dungeon is the Lady in Grey, a sorrowful woman who wanders the corridors, weeping. Legend says she was wrongly accused of a crime and executed, and now her spirit seeks justice. Many have seen her pale, shadowy form drifting through the halls, her cries echoing late at night. Some even say she touches visitors gently, leaving behind an icy chill. Today, York Dungeon is a popular tourist attraction, blending history with horror. But beyond the staged scares, many believe the real ghosts of the past still walk its corridors. Whether it's the phantom footsteps of long-dead prisoners, the eerie sobs of the Lady in Grey, or the unseen hands that pull at clothes, the dungeon's haunted reputation is very much alive. For those brave enough to visit, the past doesn't feel so distant, and the dead may not be as gone as they seem. 3. Lancaster Castle, Lancashire. Lancaster Castle, often called the Hanging Castle, has a dark and bloody history that stretches back over 1,000 years. This ancient fortress in Lancashire served as a prison for centuries, housing everyone from common thieves to the infamous Pendle witches. With so much suffering and death within its walls, it's no surprise that many believe the castle is still home to tormented spirits who refuse to move on. One of the most famous chapters in the castle's grim history is the trial of the Pendle witches in 1612. 12 people from the nearby Pendle Hill were accused of witchcraft, and 10 were hanged in Lancaster. Their ghosts are said to haunt the castle, particularly in the Witches' Tower, where they were held before their executions. Visitors have reported hearing faint whispers, sudden cold drafts, and even seeing shadowy figures in old-fashioned clothing. Some say they've felt an unseen presence tugging at their clothes or breathing down their necks, perhaps the witches seeking justice for their wrongful deaths. The castle's drop room is another hotspot for paranormal activity. This was the last place condemned prisoners would see before being led to the gallows. Many people have felt an overwhelming sense of dread in this room, as if the fear and despair of those about to die still lingers in the air. Some have heard phantom footsteps pacing the floor or the sound of a noose creaking, even though no one is there. Others claim to have seen ghostly figures standing in the corner, their faces filled with terror. One of the most frequently seen ghosts is that of a young woman in a white dress, believed to be a prisoner who died in her cell. She has been spotted wandering the corridors, her expression filled with sorrow. Staff and visitors have also reported strange occurrences like doors slamming shut on their own, unexplained knocking sounds, and lights flickering for no reason. The castle's dungeons, where prisoners were kept in filthy, cramped conditions, are especially eerie. People have heard moans and cries coming from empty cells, and some have even smelled the foul stench of decay, a grim reminder of the suffering that once took place there. Today, Lancaster Castle is open to the public, offering tours that delve into its dark past. But for many, the real attraction is the possibility of encountering something supernatural. Whether it's the restless spirits of the Pendle witches, the ghostly woman in white, or the unseen presences that lurk in the shadows, the castle's haunted reputation continues to send shivers down the spines of those who walk its ancient halls. The past may be long gone, but at Lancaster Castle, it feels uncomfortably close. For Bodman Jail, Cornwall. Bodman Jail in Cornwall stands as one of Britain's most haunted prisons, its grim history etched into every stone of its crumbling walls. Built in 1779, this foreboding structure was designed to hold prisoners in brutal conditions, with many facing execution by hanging. The jail's dark past has left behind an unsettling energy that continues to disturb visitors to this day, with countless reports of ghostly encounters that defy explanation. The most active area is the execution pit, where over 50 prisoners met their end at the gallows. The spirit of Selina Wadge, a young mother hanged in 1878 for killing her disabled son, is said to linger here. Visitors often report sudden drops in temperature in this area, accompanied by an overwhelming sense of sadness. Some have captured mysterious shadows on camera near the news beam, while others claim to hear a woman sobbing in the dead of night. The air itself feels heavy with sorrow, as if the anguish of those executed remains trapped within the prison walls. Cell 5 holds its own terrifying secret. It's known as the demon cell due to the aggressive paranormal activity reported there. Prison officers in the 1970s refused to enter after experiencing violent pushes from unseen hands and hearing guttural growls. More recently, ghost hunters investigating the cell recorded electronic voice phenomena of a man screaming, "Get out," when no one was present. The oppressive atmosphere in this cell has driven even skeptical visitors to flee in panic, overcome by an inexplicable sense of terror. The jail's chapel harbors another chilling presence. Many report seeing the ghost of a priest pacing nervously near the altar, believed to be the spirit of a clergyman who took his own life after being unable to bear the suffering of condemned prisoners. People sitting in the pews have felt sudden, sharp tugs on their clothing, while others have seen shadowy figures moving between the benches when the room is empty. The sound of ghostly hymns sometimes echoes through the chapel at night, though the source remains unseen. Perhaps most disturbing are the frequent reports of phantom footsteps in the administration wing, where the jail's governor once worked. Staff and visitors alike have heard heavy boots marching along the corridors, stopping abruptly as if someone invisible is standing right beside them. The smell of old-fashioned tobacco smoke sometimes appears without explanation, said to be from the ghost of a particularly cruel prison warden who met a violent end. Today, Bodman Jail operates as a museum and hotel, offering brave guests the chance to spend the night in its haunted cells. Many leave with stories of blankets being pulled off beds, unexplained knocking on cell doors, and the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Whether these phenomena are echoes of the past or something more supernatural remains debated, but one thing is certain. Bodman Jail's dark history refuses to stay buried, and its ghosts continue to make their presence known to those who dare to visit. The prison's walls seem to hold memories of suffering that time cannot erase, making it one of Britain's most authentically haunted locations. 5 Oxford Castle, Oxfordshire. Oxford Castle has stood for over 1,000 years, its stone walls holding secrets of suffering, torture, and death that refuse to stay buried. What began as a Norman fortress later became one of England's most notorious prisons, where men, women, and even children were locked away in horrific conditions. Today, visitors to this ancient site report spine-chilling encounters that suggest the castle's dark past has left permanent scars on the fabric of the building itself. The most famous ghost is that of Mary Blandy, a woman hanged in 1752 for poisoning her father. Her restless spirit is often seen in the castle's old prison quarters, dressed in an 18th-century gown stained at the neck, perhaps with the marks of her execution. Staff have reported seeing her reflection in windows when no one is there, and her faint whispering voice has been recorded in empty corridors. Some visitors claim to smell roses suddenly, which was said to be Mary's favorite scent, followed by an unnatural coldness in the air. Deep in the castle's crypt lies the most terrifying spot, the well chamber. This dark, circular pit was where prisoners were lowered as punishment, left in complete darkness with only a few inches of freezing water. Modern visitors report feeling hands brushing against them in this area when completely alone. Many have captured ghostly faces in photographs here, their expressions twisted in agony. Paranormal investigators often pick up desperate pleas for help on their recording devices, though no living person is present to make the sounds. The castle's old staircases tell their own haunted tales. Numerous people have reported seeing a small boy in outdated clothing running up and down the steps, only for him to vanish when approached. Historians believe this might be the spirit of a child prisoner who died of neglect in the 1800s. Staff have heard childish laughter echoing through empty halls late at night, followed by the sound of small feet pattering across stone floors. Some claim to feel an invisible child's hand slip into theirs while walking through certain areas. Perhaps most disturbing are the accounts from the castle's former condemned cells. Visitors often report feeling sudden, overwhelming despair when entering these rooms, a sensation so intense it brings some to tears. Others have witnessed shadowy figures sitting on the beds, their heads in their hands as if awaiting execution. The air in these cells frequently becomes thick and difficult to breathe, with many reporting the smell of unwashed bodies and fear persisting despite thorough cleaning. Today, Oxford Castle operates as a tourist attraction, offering ghost tours that often turn unexpectedly real. Guides tell of equipment malfunctioning without cause, voices answering questions when no one has spoken, and a constant feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Whether these phenomena are echoes of past suffering or something more supernatural remains unclear, but one thing is certain: Oxford Castle's dark history continues to make its presence known to those who walk its ancient corridors. The stones themselves seem to remember the pain they've witnessed, refusing to let the dead rest in peace. 6. Chillingham Castle, Northumberland. Chillingham Castle in Northumberland holds the grim distinction of being one of Britain's most haunted castles, with its dungeon being particularly active with paranormal phenomena. While primarily known as a medieval fortress, its underground prison chambers witness such extreme torture and suffering that many believe the victims' souls remain trapped within its cold stone walls. The castle's reputation for supernatural activity is so well documented that even skeptical researchers have left convinced of its haunting. The dungeon's most famous specter is the Blue Boy, whose agonized cries were heard for years coming from behind a particular wall. When renovations finally broke through this wall in the 1920s, workers discovered the skeletal remains of a young boy dressed in blue, walled up alive centuries earlier. Guests in the pink room above the dungeon have reported seeing a blue glow surrounding a child's figure at midnight, sometimes accompanied by the sound of faint sobbing. The temperature in this area drops dramatically when the apparition appears, with several visitors claiming their breath became visible in sudden cold pockets during warm summer nights. More disturbing are the dungeon's darker entities. Numerous witnesses have described being overcome with violent nausea when entering certain cells, particularly one where a notorious torturer worked during the medieval period. People report feeling invisible hands gripping their throats, while others have captured strange mists and shadow figures in photographs. The castle's records tell of prisoners going mad in these cells, and modern visitors often describe an overwhelming sense of despair that seems to come from the walls themselves. Some have fled in terror after hearing guttural whispers in what sounds like Old English coming from empty corners. One particularly unsettling account involves a group of paranormal investigators who spent a night locked in the dungeon. Their recording equipment captured clear voices pleading for mercy in archaic dialects, along with the sound of dragging chains when no one was moving. One investigator swore he was pushed violently against a wall by an unseen force, leaving bruises that remained for weeks. Others have reported seeing a tall, skeletal figure in tattered nobleman's clothing standing silently in the darkest corner of the torture chamber, believed to be the ghost of a cruel former jailer who took pleasure in his work. Perhaps most chilling is the dungeon's apparent ability to affect the living. Visitors often report leaving with unexplained scratches, sudden headaches, or the persistent smell of burning flesh clinging to their clothes. The castle's current owners keep detailed logs of these encounters, noting that activity increases during stormy weather or on anniversaries of historical executions. Even hardened skeptics admit there's something profoundly wrong about the atmosphere in Chillingham's dungeon, a heavy, watchful presence that seems to resent the living for their freedom. Whether these phenomena are residual energy from past horrors or something more sentient remains unknown, but the dungeon's reputation as a place where the veil between worlds is thin continues to draw both the curious and the brave to its ominous depths. 7. The Clink Prison, London. The Clink Prison in London holds the dark honor of being England's oldest and most notorious medieval prison, dating back to 1144. Though only ruins remain today, the underground cells beneath Southwark still echo with the tormented cries of prisoners who suffered unimaginable horrors within its walls. The prison's name became so synonymous with punishment that, in the Clink, entered common language as slang for being jailed. What makes this site particularly haunted is the sheer brutality of its history. Prisoners were routinely starved, tortured, and left to rot in filth, creating an atmosphere of suffering that seems permanently etched into the stone. Walking through the reconstructed dungeon today, visitors often report sudden, overwhelming sensations of despair. The air grows thick with the imagined stench of unwashed bodies and human waste, though the space is clean. Many feel invisible hands grabbing at their clothes in the narrow passageways, particularly near the original iron restraint bars where prisoners were chained. The most common apparition is a skeletal figure in ragged clothing, seen crawling along the floor begging for food, likely the ghost of a prisoner who died of starvation. Tour guides tell of cameras malfunctioning near this spot, with photos showing strange streaks of light or mist where no natural explanation exists. One of the most active areas is the women's dungeon, where female prisoners were kept in even worse conditions than men. Visitors report hearing high-pitched wailing coming from empty corners, sometimes so loud it drowns out the tour guide's voice. Some women have left in tears after feeling an overwhelming sense of panic and the sensation of being violently grabbed. The spirit known as the White Nun is said to appear here, a woman falsely accused of theft who died in her cell, now seen gliding through walls with a mournful expression. Others have smelled rotting flesh near the punishment devices, despite there being no possible source for the odor. Perhaps most disturbing are the experiences in the pitch-black isolation cells. Many visitors refuse to enter after feeling an invisible presence breathing down their necks. Others emerge pale and shaken, reporting that the darkness seemed to move around them. Several people have fainted in these cells, later describing visions of emaciated prisoners reaching out to them before losing consciousness. Electronic voice phenomena recorded here have captured clear pleas for help in early modern English, with one particularly chilling recording stating, "Why do you not see me?" when no living person was present. The Clink's museum staff keep careful records of paranormal incidents, noting that activity increases dramatically at night. Security guards report hearing chains rattling and cell doors slamming after closing time, despite all physical doors being securely locked. Some have seen shadowy figures moving between exhibits when the building is empty. The most convincing evidence comes from thermal imaging cameras that have repeatedly captured human-shaped cold spots moving through areas where no drafts could explain the temperature changes. What makes the Clink uniquely terrifying is how its hauntings seem to interact with visitors. Unlike many haunted locations where phenomena are passive, here the spirits appear aware of the living. People report being called by name by unseen voices, or having their hair pulled by invisible hands. The suffering embedded in these ancient walls seems to demand witness, as if the dead want their stories told. Whether these experiences are psychological manifestations of the prison's horrific history or genuine supernatural activity remains debated, but one thing is certain. Nearly everyone who visits the Clink leaves convinced they've brushed against something beyond normal understanding. The prison may be in ruins, but its ghosts remain very much alive. 8 Portsmouth Naval Prison, Hampshire. Portsmouth Naval Prison, known locally as the Glass House for its distinctive glass roof, stands as one of Britain's most haunted military prisons. Built in 1848 to discipline Royal Navy sailors, its brutal regime of punishment left behind a legacy of suffering that many believe still echoes through its abandoned corridors. Though officially closed in 2013, former guards and urban explorers report chilling encounters that suggest the prison's troubled past has left permanent scars on the building. The prison's reputation for harsh discipline created an atmosphere of despair that seems to linger. Sailors convicted of crimes like desertion or insubordination faced months of hard labor, solitary confinement, and brutal physical punishment. Many prisoners broke under the strain, with several documented suicides occurring in the cells. Today, visitors to the empty prison report hearing phantom screams coming from the isolation blocks, particularly in cell 14 where a young sailor hanged himself in the 1890s. Several people have captured shadowy figures standing in this cell on camera, only for them to vanish when approached. The air in this corridor grows unnaturally cold, even on warm days, with many reporting the smell of sweat and fear clinging to the walls. One of the most frequently seen apparitions is that of a naval officer in 19th-century uniform, believed to be the ghost of a particularly cruel prison warden. He's been spotted walking the upper landings, his boots making audible footsteps on the metal grates before disappearing through solid walls. Urban explorers tell of feeling watched by this figure, with some reporting sudden bouts of nausea when he appears. Others have heard gruff commands shouted in their ears when completely alone in the building. The prison's shower block holds its own terror, many report hearing the sound of running water and scrubbing brushes when the pipes have long been disconnected, along with the occasional scream as if someone is being attacked. Perhaps most disturbing are the accounts from the punishment cells in the basement. These lightless rooms were used for extreme disciplinary cases, with prisoners left for weeks at a time. Modern visitors describe being overcome with panic in these cells, some experiencing temporary paralysis as if held down by invisible hands. Electronic voice recordings here have captured sobbing and whispered prayers in period naval slang. Thermal imaging has repeatedly shown human-shaped cold spots moving through these rooms when no living person is present. The prison's glass roof, designed to let in punishing sunlight during summer months, now casts eerie patterns of light that some claim form ghostly faces at certain times of day. Security cameras have captured unexplained figures moving through empty hallways at night, their uniforms clearly dating from different historical periods. One consistent report involves the sound of a naval drum beating the Rogue's March, traditionally played when dishonorably discharging sailors, heard coming from the parade ground when no source for the sound exists. What makes Portsmouth Naval Prison unique is how its hauntings reflect military precision. Phenomena often occur at specific times corresponding to historical events, the anniversary of executions or at exact times when punishments were administered. This has led paranormal researchers to suggest the building acts as a kind of recording device, replaying its darkest moments. Whether these experiences are supernatural or psychological manifestations of the prison's oppressive history, they leave no doubt that the Glasshouse's reputation as one of Britain's most haunted military sites is well earned. The cries of dishonored sailors, it seems, continue to echo through its empty halls long after the last prisoner departed. 9 Derby Jail, Derbyshire. Derby Jail, dating back to 1756, is one of Britain's most intensely haunted former prisons, with a history so brutal it seems to have left permanent scars on the building. This small but terrifying jail held prisoners in horrific conditions before public executions, and today operates as a museum where visitors regularly encounter phenomena that defy explanation. The jail's dark past included housing everyone from petty thieves to murderers, with many meeting their end at the gallows just outside its walls. What makes Derby Jail particularly haunted is how consistently and violently the paranormal activity manifests to modern visitors. The most active area is Cell 13, where a woman named Celia was imprisoned for killing her abusive husband. Though she was eventually pardoned, the trauma of her imprisonment left its mark. Visitors to this cell often report feeling someone breathing down their neck, while others see the shadowy figure of a woman in Victorian dress standing in the corner. Many women inexplicably burst into tears upon entering, overwhelmed by Celia's lingering despair. Paranormal investigators have recorded electronic voice phenomena here of a woman whispering, "I didn't mean to," when no living person spoke. The cell's door frequently slams shut on its own, with several visitors becoming trapped inside until staff release them, despite the door having no lock mechanism. The jail's execution room holds even darker energy. Over 50 people were hanged here, their deaths treated as public entertainment. Today, visitors report sudden temperature drops so extreme they can see their breath in summer. Others feel invisible ropes brush against their necks, or hear the creak of the gallows mechanism operating when no one is near it. The most disturbing accounts come from the small holding cell next to the execution room, where condemned prisoners spent their final night. Many people refuse to enter after feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, while others report seeing ghostly faces pressed against the tiny window in the door when no one is inside. Perhaps the most aggressive spirit is that of a former hangman who worked at the jail in the early 1800s. Staff and visitors alike report being pushed, scratched, or having their hair pulled by an unseen force, particularly near the original gallows beam. The smell of rotting flesh sometimes appears without explanation, strongest near where bodies were left hanging for public display. Some visitors have captured clear images of a scowling man in old-fashioned clothing standing behind them in photos, though no such person was present when the picture was taken. What makes Derby Jail unique is how interactive the hauntings are. Unlike many haunted locations where phenomena are subtle, here the spirits seem aware of and responsive to visitors. People report hearing their names called by unseen voices, or feeling distinct taps on their shoulders when alone in cells. Overnight guests often wake to find handprints pressed into their bedding that match no one in their group. The jail's current owners keep detailed logs of these encounters, noting that certain cells produce consistent phenomena for different visitors, suggesting specific spirits remain tied to particular locations. Today, Derby Jail offers ghost hunts and overnight stays, with many participants leaving convinced they've contacted the other side. Whether these experiences are psychological reactions to the building's oppressive atmosphere or genuine supernatural encounters remains debated. But one thing is certain, the suffering embedded in these ancient walls continues to make itself known to those brave enough to visit. The jail's ghosts, it seems, are desperate to tell their stories to anyone who will listen. 10 Woking Prison, Surrey. Woking Prison, though demolished in 2009, remains one of Surrey's most notorious haunted locations, with former staff and local residents reporting persistent ghostly activity on the site where the jail once stood. Built in 1858 as a military prison before becoming a civilian jail, its grim history of executions and harsh discipline left behind a paranormal legacy that continues to unsettle the area. The prison was known for its particularly brutal treatment of inmates, including the controversial execution of several soldiers during World War I, whose tormented spirits are said to haunt the grounds to this day. The most frequently reported phenomenon is the sound of phantom footsteps echoing across the empty field where cell blocks once stood. Local dog walkers often hear the distinct sound of heavy boots marching in formation, sometimes accompanied by muffled shouts of military drill commands. These sounds appear most often at dawn and dusk, coinciding with historical prisoner roll call times. Several witnesses have reported seeing translucent figures in outdated prison uniforms standing at attention in the mist before vanishing abruptly. The most chilling accounts come from construction workers who prepared the site for redevelopment. Many refused to work after experiencing tools moving on their own and hearing desperate pleas for help coming from empty air. One particularly active spot corresponds to where the execution shed once stood. Over a dozen men were hanged here between 1878 and 1914, their deaths carried out in a small brick building in the prison yard. Residents of nearby homes report waking to the sound of a trapdoor slamming in the middle of the night, though nothing physical causes the noise. Others have seen the ghostly figure of a young soldier in World War I uniform standing near the site's perimeter, believed to be Private Thomas Hawkins, executed for desertion in 1916 despite evidence of shell shock. His apparition appears distressed, often reaching out as if begging for understanding before fading away. The prison's most violent energy seems concentrated where the punishment block once stood. Visitors to the area describe sudden overwhelming feelings of panic and despair, with some experiencing temporary paralysis as if held down by invisible restraints. Others report smelling the distinct odor of sweat and blood in the open air, with no possible source. Paranormal investigators have recorded electronic voice phenomena here of men sobbing and screaming in terror, along with the sound of lashing whips cutting through air. Local legend says this spot remains cursed by the spirit of a particularly cruel guard who took pleasure in administering floggings. What makes Woking Prison's hauntings unique is how the activity has persisted despite the building's demolition. The land itself seems to retain the memory of suffering that occurred there. Psychics visiting the site describe feeling echoes of the prison's layout as they walk across what is now an empty field, accurately identifying locations of former cell blocks and execution sites without prior knowledge. The phenomena follow seasonal patterns. Activity increases around the anniversaries of executions and during autumn months when the prison traditionally held its harshest disciplinary measures. Today, the site awaits redevelopment, but construction has been repeatedly delayed by unexplained equipment failures and worker complaints of supernatural harassment. Whether these experiences represent genuine hauntings or psychological reactions to the location's dark history remains debated. But for those who have encountered the phantom prisoners of Woking, there's no doubt the land remembers its past. The executions may have stopped over a century ago, but the cries for justice and mercy seem forever trapped in the very earth where the prison once stood. The ghosts of Woking refuse to be forgotten, continuing to make their presence known to those sensitive enough to perceive them.